The Secrets of Middle-earth is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, where we discuss the hidden themes and deeper layers found in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, whether in his writings or in any of the media derived from them. I'm Jeff Haecker, and joining me today on the panel are Thomas Salerno. Hey, Thomas.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, and Patrick Mason. Hey, Pat.
Howdy, Jeff.
How's it going? So be sure to follow The Secrets of Middle-earth in Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, or any podcast directory or app. And you can find us on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or on Twitter where we're at SQPN, or on Instagram where we are at StarQuest Network. And don't forget that you can get your own official Secrets of Middle-earth merch, including our awesome t-shirt at sqpn.com/merch. It's a great way for you to support the show and show your love for Tolkien and his wonderful world of Middle-earth. So today we are going to be discussing episode 4 of Rings of Power Season 2. Eldest is the title. However, before we did that, the War of Rohirrim trailer, which we mentioned last week, has come out, and we thought we might give a little bit of brief reaction, not a full, hour-long breakdown or everything or anything like that. But what did y'all think of this trailer? And I discovered, thanks to Pat, that there are actually 2 trailers, a U.S. one and then an international one. So what did you think of the trailer, Thomas?
I really liked it. I'm excited, and every time I talk about this movie, I mention that the director is the same guy who directed The Ninth Jedi for Star Wars, and I love that short. Like, it's one of my favorites of the Star Wars Visions short. So if he's directing it, I'm sure it'll be great. I'm on board. I liked it. I was surprised how much they focused on Hera in the trailer, who is Helm's daughter. She's unnamed in the books, but they've given her a name for this movie. Yeah, I was surprised how much it focused on her and not on some of the other characters, but I'm on board. It looks great, action packed. A white eagle, that's neat. So I'm kind of all on board. Yeah,
and it had the Watcher in the water too.
Mm-hmm. Right, with a tree on his head or something.
Yeah.
It's a Watcher's dad. I don't know.
What do you think, Pat?
I greatly enjoyed the Japanese version of the trailer more than the American one, even though I didn't know any of the words. And because it didn't focus as much on Hera, it kind of gave a focus to most of the characters broadly, and I think that's likely going to be more representative of what the movie is going to be. I don't expect this to be a girl boss warrior princess Rohirrim movie. I expect they're actually gonna. It seems to me like they're actually kind of trying to keep to the story, which is good. I do think you can already see that maybe it's taking a few liberties with some things, and that's okay, because I've come to the acceptance that it's all just fan fiction. And so I'm along for the ride. I do enjoy this style of Japanese animations. There's a couple styles I'm not as big of a fan of. I like this style. It's very reminiscent recently of the Castlevania style done on Netflix. Hopefully it will not be as gory as that show was. That got to the point where I was like, I just can't watch this anymore. It's too much. But this looks pretty well done, spectacularly animated, and does a lot of crazy things you couldn't do in kind of live action that you can do with animation. And I think it's probably it looks like it's gonna take that and run with it, which is always fun to watch.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Star Wars shorts, the crazy things the Jedi do.
I really enjoyed the trailer too. We've been kind of like waiting for it, and glad it finally came out. And yeah, like I said, I didn't realize there were 2 versions of it, so I watched the international one right before. And while it didn't have subtitles in English, it still looked really cool, and it showed some additional scenes. Like you see Saruman in it. You see a little bit more of Helm Hammerhand fighting something in the snow. I didn't quite get a good look at it, but yeah, it looks really cool. Yeah, we mentioned the eagle, the Watcher in the water. It's got some of the Oliphants, which I think were in the other trailer as well. But and then yeah, I think in both versions at the very end you see orcs talking about rings. So it's kind of like it's. I'm kind of considering it as part of the Jackson verse as well, unless proven otherwise. So it's
it definitely is. Yeah, because isn't he producing it?
Yeah, I think he's an executive producer on it. But yeah, it looks really cool, and it'll be nice to get new Tolkien on screen, or well, Tolkien fan fiction, I should say, on screen. Something new, because we've gotten the re-release of the original Lord of the Rings Jackson movies, but it'll be awesome to see something new on screen. And then the other bit of news I saw, speaking of Tolkien on screen, I saw something from both Ian McKellen and Orlando Bloom have said they want to reprise their characters, which I thought was interesting. So I didn't know if y'all had read that or seen any of that. The Orlando Bloom stuff was kind of interesting because he talked with Andy Serkis, and they might use AI in some way. It sounded like de-aging. So hopefully they don't do more than that, because I don't think Tolkien would be very thrilled about AI anyway, but especially
the tool of Sauron.
Yeah. So, but I don't know if either of you saw that news or, had any opinions on it.
I live in a cave, so I did not see the news. I live in a hole on the side of a hill.
I did see it mentioned. I also saw that Viggo has at least been approached. I'm not sure if it said he's interested, just that he's been approached to reprise Aragorn. But I expected to see those three characters if they were going to do a Hunt for Gollum movie, so it makes sense.
We're getting the band back together.
Yeah. I wonder if
anytime you say Viggo, you have to say Viggo.
Oh, right. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. You've walked into that one. Yeah. So no, but what was I gonna say? Can we really top though, like Legolas Mario jumping up falling blocks like from the Hobbit movie?
It can be topped.
Can Legolas? Because we have Legolas doing that, and then riding. I think when I checked out of that last Hobbit movie is when he jumps in the air and grabs onto that bat, and like it carries him away. I think I that was literally the moment when I checked out. Like I looked over at my brother and I was like, what the heck, man? I'm like,
it's your brain, your head's like, well, I'm done. You get the door basically open and closed. And just walks off.
Oh, I remember my exact words. I said, "You have got to be kidding me," and then.
Yeah.
Anyway, weird tangent, but there's our contractually obligated mention of the Hobbit trilogy.
Got it out of the way early.
Yep,
solid.
Everybody
check their bingo card.
I could see them bringing Orlando Bloom. I could see them bringing Ian McKellen because he's not going to be able to do a lot of the physical stuff, but he could, he could still do the dialogue, and you could see him in shots. Orlando Bloom, I think, is still, he's older, but I think Viggo's a good amount older now and looks a good amount older. So if he comes back, I kind of hope they keep him in like a narrating type role or something, or telling the story. I think we talked about that when we did Hunt for Gollum, the fan film earlier this year, like telling the story to his son or something. I hope it sounds like they're going to probably use AI because that's just what everybody's doing now, but hopefully they don't use it, they just use a little bit, for de-aging. And I'm sure, of course, Gollum will be, animated probably with, I don't know if Andy Serkis will want to do the mocap for that. Cause he's, we're 20 years later from Lord of the Rings when he was doing it. But anyway, all right. Well,
no, they're just going to do Andy Serkis. No motion capture. It's just like we all just know he's Gollum.
All right.
And by the way, if any fans want to make a bingo card for this show, that would be great. I want to see it.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to make it, maybe if I get bored enough, I'll try to put one together or something, and we can all play Rings of Power bingo next week. So
yeah,
all right.
Pat said cautiously optimistic.
All right. So before we go off on too many more tangents, we should get into the why we're here tonight. So I got a plot summary here. So in this episode, Elrond leads a fellowship to Eregion. They have to take a route through some evil hills, encountering barrow wights, and they lose one of their company. After they defeat them, they find Adar's forces marching on Eregion. An arrow catches one of them, but Galadriel's ring heals him. She tells Elrond to get to Lindon, while she delays the orcs, giving him the ring. Definitely Not Gandalf meets Tom Bombadil, who saves him from a tree. He asks Tom for help learning to use his powers, and Tom states another wizard had visited, wanting to learn his powers. However, he turned dark. He also says if the Dark Wizard and Sauron join forces, their combined strength may be too much to stop. Also in Rune, Poppy and Nori meet the Stores, who imprison them initially, thinking they are friends of the evil wizard. They learn that the Harfoots are the descendants of the Stores, who left looking for a land of plenty called the Suzat, which means Shire. Arondir and Isildur search for Theo, who has been placed in a tree cell with other wild men. They bring Estrid along to help find him, but her deception is revealed, and she goes with them in chains. But she tries to save Isildur and Arondir from a swamp hole. It turns out to be a nameless thing that has swallowed Arondir and Isildur, but Arondir manages to kill it. Then they meet an Ent and an Ent wife, who let Theo and the other men they caught go. Arondir learns Adar is on the move and decides to follow the orcs. Theo decides to stay in Pelargir, and Arondir calls him the Lord of Pelargir. Estrid's betrothed was also found with this group, and they reunite. And then the episode ends with Galadriel being captured by Adar. All right, so I figure we'll go first impressions, and I figure we start with the biggest thing, probably Tom Bombadil. So what was you guys' reaction to seeing Tom Bombadil on screen in this?
He was more subdued than I thought, but overall, I was pleased. There are a lot of moments where he quotes his lines from Fellowship of the Ring verbatim. So that was a lot of kind of remember this kind of stuff. So, but I enjoyed it. I'm like I said, I'm kind of a sucker for that stuff. I like his role in this of training the wizards, and I'm really glad that they kept in his speech about how he's the eldest, and I'm older than this, I'm older than that, and he even mentions the stars are newcomers for him, which is neat. But maybe we'll get into this later. But what was going on with that symbolism of him and the lamb? I was like, what are you trying to say here, show? But,
yeah, I wasn't sure about that either. So but we talk about.
but my initial first impressions were positive. Like I said, more subdued than I thought, but I like this actor as Tom. Yeah.
All right, let us have it, Pat. What do you think?
I mean, he wasn't Tom Bombadil enough. He was
I like to see that.
He was like a half cup of Tom Bombadil mixed with water, or like some kind of downer. Like it's like downer Bombadil. He wasn't sort of the mirth filled. I mean, peppy's not quite the right word, but it's just this just kind of like bubbly mirth feeling you have going through those passages in the Lord of the Rings, and that's almost how every voice actor plays him. Mm-hmm. And then this actor / director has gone kind of a different direction, and it's difficult for me to like connect the two, because if he's like this big of a downer now, like wouldn't he be a bigger downer later on? And I always feel like Tom Bombadil is supposed to represent sort of an unchanging, kind of an unchanging thing. Like he's not just the eldest; he just is. And this very much was not like the Tom Bombadil I knew and loved. And I did enjoy his interactions with the stranger. Although the stranger getting eaten by a tree, I was like, okay, come on, guys. Like,
yeah, they lifted that scene directly from the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah. I mean, he says the exact same thing to the tree that he does in Fellowship. And I get it. It's a callback, but it's a little too much on the nose. It's like getting punched instead of getting, like the wink touch nose thing. So
if this show has taught us anything, it's not subtle.
Yeah. And I will say, like the wizard's totally Gandalf is like really steeping up, but I don't care. I'm tripling down. He's not Gandalf. This is a blue wizard.
Yeah, I thought it was. I liked the portrayal of Tom Bombadil, but yeah, I can kind of see that he was more subdued than the Tom that we know from the Fellowship. So it'll be interesting to see, because then we have the line in the trailer that he says he's very like kind of even more of a downer, like all of Middle Earth is in peril. Will you leave them to their doom? But he also was still kind of jovial and giving his kind of nonsensical sayings and like. His kind of circular saying, like, everything belongs to themselves, doesn't it? If you were, it's funny watching it, but if you were in that position, you'd be like, it's so annoying when that happens.
What kind of madman have I taken up with here?
Yeah. if you've ever read philosophy or studied any philosophy, a lot of it can be like that. So it was kind of funny, and I mean, Tolkien would have been very steeped in that as well, writing Tom Bombadil. So. Yeah, it was interesting, and I'm curious to see what they do with it, or where they go with this particular storyline. And we heard Goldberry, but we don't see Goldberry. And
I liked that scene because it was so awkward. It was there's that awkward moment with the stranger and Tom, and then Tom just laughs, and I was like, okay, that was funny.
That was so very Tom. Like that part was so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he really should have been more like that. I thought it was like maybe he's more subdued because he's away from Goldberry and he's away from that little area that he normally stays in where he's quote unquote the master, and he has, if not control, at least influence over things. And so I'm like, so maybe that's why he's subdued, but the other thing I thought is like maybe they were afraid to have him go full Tom because they were afraid if for the people who have no clue about Tom Bombadil because they haven't read the books and don't follow like Tolkien influencers on social media, they're going to be like, what the heck is this guy? And like the show has jumped the shark now, having this crazy guy in it. So like maybe they were just gun shy about having full blown Tom, but they shouldn't have been. He could launch like 1 million like memes. It'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that, and presumably the stranger, who's definitely not Gandalf, will start learning some of his powers through Tom's assistance.
He is so Gandalf.
Yeah, I know.
What does he say? He says a wizard's staff is like a name. It's yours to wield already if you're worthy of it. And I'm like, we're talking about his name again. I'm like, as if we know it already. Like,
well, and I have a note later, or even right after this, of the stores say Grand Elf, and it's like, come on, how? Are you? I
was like, what?
You're painting a neon billboard, pointing and saying it's Gandalf. So
no, he's gonna be Bloodorthin. That's a deep cut. That was Gandalf's original name.
Okay.
Was in some of Tolkien's earlier drafts.
Okay. I would say I don't get it.
he's Bloodorthin, and then I think a reader, like what we would call today a beta reader, was like, you can't call him that, and so he's like, fine, he's Gandalf. But yeah, that would be funny if they went there, or at least made like a reference to it. Anyway.
Yeah, and then as far as the lamb, I don't know if that was just something like. He's just Tom cultivates these intelligent animals around him, Like
But
maybe it's just
It's a white
lamb.
lamb, just like you see on those holy cards. And he picks it up like the good shepherd. And what's weird too is that he the lamb's name is Iarwain, which is also Tom's elvish name. Iarwain Ben-Adar, eldest. Iarwain means eldest. So I don't know what they're trying to say there, but
maybe they're because and for more Tom Bombadil speculation, we did a whole episode on this last year. So
48 minutes later.
Pause this, go listen to it. No, I'm kidding.
2 hours later, you know.
But I think one of the things we talked about, and I saw something, I didn't really read the article, but there was something about the creators answering if Tom was Eru Ilúvatar in the show. And that was definitely a theory that I think has been around for a while and that we talked about. It was, is this actually Eru Ilúvatar entering into the world? And at least for me, I don't think it is, because Eru's the cosmology of Arda is that the Valar are the ones who enter the world and do the things, and then they send the Maiar further into the world to do the things, who train the people to do the things. There's really a lot of separation. It's Eru's way up here, then it's the Valar. So there's really not any entrance of all except for one specific act, which was the Akalabeth in the Silmarillion,
right?
That Ilúvatar does. But for the most part, he stays away. So I tend to think it's not Eru Ilúvatar, that it's, and like I said, we had a whole episode on theories, but
right. But I just felt trolled by the lamb imagery. I was like, what? You're trolling Christian viewers.
Like shows up. I think it has maybe not even like a minute of screen time, and you're just like, what was that about?
Yeah.
What?
Awesome.
Well, before we spend the whole episode talking about this, what did y'all think of the? This episode, as you already kind of said, Thomas, it had very much in like the references to the Jackson films and to some of the callbacks to things. Like it had the nameless thing, which Arondir says, which is a giant snake monster, which I know those were in the books, but it seemed very much a callback to this. And then it had one of the other kind of callbacks that I caught was Galadriel says word for word, go back to the shadows, which is what Gandalf says on the bridge of Khazad-dûm to the Balrog. So it's like they're really trying to say, hey, remember those movies? This is part of that.
Star Wars level of quoting other movies in the series.
Yeah.
Where Star Wars does that so often, and it's like,
and
someday it'll be all of the dialogue eventually.
Well, some of it that if they're going to lift dialogue, they're lifting it from some of the good places, because there is questionable dialogue in this show. I don't think anyone can dispute that, but
I know I'm not going to dispute that.
We see, so then I guess what do you want to talk about next? We could talk about the stores, and
far less annoying than I feared they would be.
The stores.
I'm going to hate every scene they're in. They're just going to annoy me. But no, they're fine. I thought it was interesting that the Harfoots are essentially descended from the stores. And I'm wondering, I was talking about this with my brother over the weekend. When are they going to bring the Fallowhides into it? Because at least in the lore, I believe the Fallowhides are the first to be called hobbits. Because the Fallowhides were among the Northmen. And the Northmen word for halflings was Holbitla, or hole builder, which becomes shortened to just hobbit. So I'm wondering if we find the future season, maybe if we finally meet the Fallowhides, that's when we'll start hearing the word, at least probably the word Holbitla. Like that's what the men will call them or something like that. But I'm enjoying the storyline so far. I expected that whole thing of them mistrusting Nori and Poppy to go on for much longer. And that's one of my pet peeves in shows. So the fact that they kind of cut it short with like the reveal that like Sadek Burrows was descended from some kind of store explorer. I like that. I thought that was okay.
Yeah, because from what I remember, Sadek had his ears were like a little bit more like bigger and more kind of pointy, and it looked very much like the store's ears. So I think so. When I saw Merrimack, who was the store that Nori and Poppy first meet, I was like, oh, he looks like Sadek, and then I kind of thought, oh, is Sadek from this? I did have the thought, is Sadek from this group originally or descended from this group? Yeah, and then as soon as they said this the Suzad, I was like, oh, that probably, and I didn't know the word, but I was like, oh, that probably means Shire. And you know, if you look it up, it's the Westron. Yeah, it's the Westron word for Shire, which is the common tongue. So, and from what I also from the end of season 1, where the Harfoots kind of settled, I don't think the map makes sense, but it does very much look like the Shire, like not without hobbit holes and buildings and stuff, but it did look a lot like the Shire, like green and hilly. So I think they're kind of setting up that maybe the Harfoots kind of stay there for a while, and then if Nori and Poppy and the stores leave Rune and get there, then maybe that kind of sets up the Shire. So that's probably a storyline we'll see play out over however many seasons of the show. But I did like the rules that Merrimack gave them. There's 4 rules, and then he only gives them 3, and he forgets the last rule, which is don't talk to the goon is her name.
Don't call her the goon.
That was rule number 4.
Oh, I wasn't listening.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, that was very Hobbit-like.
What did you think of the stores, Pat?
I did not have any complaints about the stores. They were definitely not as annoying as the Harfoots. And generally, that whole sequence of events inside that episode made sense, as far as I could tell. So, yeah, that was fine. It's an interesting. I kind of feel like maybe they're off on their own plot adventure now. That will result in the stores going, west. We'll see if they hook back. They'll encounter the stranger again in some fashion or form, but I'm interested to see what that fashion's going to take. So,
yeah, because we see these Eastern masked men show up to the stores, so it seems like the stores are maybe they're paying tribute of some sort to this Dark Wizard, or they're kind of among his subjects, and the Easterners are kind of collecting tribute or like keeping them in line. So so it'll be interesting to see what plays out there.
And I think what needs to happen is that the stores kind of need to come west, because like in kind of like a lore thing, Smeagol was a store, and they were living by the banks of the Great River by that time. So they've got to at least start moving west at some point.
Yeah, maybe the last scene of the show is you see us one of these halflings kind of start to dig a hole and look up, and look up across these green hills, and you're
yeah.
It's the Shire.
I wouldn't doubt that at all. That's kind of, the minute you said it, I was like, yeah, that's how they're going to end this. It's going to be Smeagol finding the ring or something like that.
But we do
imagine if the last line of the show is like they reach Sousa or whatever, and like one of them says, "In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit," and like it comes full circle.
But before we leave Rune, we did have another scene of the wizard. Just not too much there, but I really want to know more about this guy.
The dark blue wizard.
Yeah, the dark blue wizard.
Kind of a navy blue.
Yeah, that's I think that's my thought too, is that he's one of the blue wizards who's gone bad temporarily or maybe permanently.
Or Saruman Chu, as I'm calling him. I just can't get that in my head that he looks like Fu Manchu, kind of. Yeah. So
Saruman looks like Saruman. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what they're definitely like trying to call back to, like, hey, remember Saruman? He was bad. This guy looks like Saruman, but
yeah, it's he definitely is not but like, I like that he has his own fortress. I forget what it's called. I just hope that he's not one of those bad guys who just sits in his big chair the whole time and doesn't do anything.
Well, I think they're setting up that the stranger will and this guy will face off this season. For maybe it's that the Easterners take the stores to the wizard. They're off to see the wizard, and the stranger has to go. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's great.
And the stranger has to go and
that's not in town.
The Lollipop Guild.
Yeah, the stranger has to go save them from that, and that's kind of how he comes into his powers, and he utters the line, "My name is Olorin," or something, which is Gandalf's original name. So
right, yeah.
So we'll see. Yeah, but I mean, I want to know more about this guy and see more of him, because it's these semi-mystery characters that are some of the more interesting. Because if you've read the Silmarillion, you know where the show's going, so it's hard to it's hard to speculate about this stuff like you would in like a Star Wars show or something, because we have the roadmap where everything should be going, barring any huge canon breakers. But awesome. Well then, yeah, we have the kind of the other. There's the three storylines. We didn't really check in with Numenor much, or Numenor at all, other than Isildur this episode. But we start off with Elrond and his group, his company, if you will, his fellowship, going to try to make it to Eregion.
His fellowship of red shirts.
Yeah.
At least one of them dies anyway.
Yeah. Pretty grim fate, because I've watched it 3 times, and I think on the third watch it sounded like the elf got sucked into the barrow and was like, you could almost hear like bones crunching.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. Since again, I could not actually see what was going on. I watched this on a bigger screen, but even like a normal size TV is no good. You've got to watch this on big screen TV or bigger, because it's just so dark. Like I know during our discussion of the Hunt for Golem fan movie, we talked about how dark that movie was.
Yeah.
That movie was well lit compared to this thing. It's just so it's unreasonably dark. Like I can't tell what's going on. And I don't know, maybe that's what the director wants, but then I have to ask myself why.
Yeah, I mean,
I go saying when he gets sucked into the hole, I'm like, oh no, guy who I didn't even know what your name was.
Because Galadriel, when they're starting, or Elrond says, we need 2 swordsmen and 2 bowmen, and because I think there were 6 of them total.
Yeah, there was Map Guy, who seemed to know his way around directions.
Map Guy.
I'm the map. Sorry, my dad. My kids watch Doris sometimes, but yeah. But yeah, I think part of the darkness was the barrow wights, and I thought they looked okay, but if they turned up the brightness, they might have not.
I like their eyes, because it was described exactly like in the book. These kind of cold bluish glow. That was very creepy. I thought it was creepier when you can't see them and all you can see is the eyes coming out of the darkness. That was effective. Yeah. Oh, and that creepy whispering. Of the evil curse from Fellowship of the Ring. That was unsettling. Because you can hear it in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how one of the elves describes it. It's like a song, or not even a song. It's like somebody is remembering what a song was. I was like, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and they kind of talk about that because they go through these hills because the bridge that they were going to take is out, looking like it's struck by lightning. So somehow Sauron did that, I guess, from what they said. Or
yeah, I was like, lightning do that? Like,
yeah, no, I don't know.
That was a guy who deals with electricity for his entire life. No, lightning will not do that.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I think they just wanted a shot of a cool bridge, and they could have just said, "Oh, we just haven't been here in so long. The bridge is out." They could have they could have done anything, but they had to say. I mean.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on from that. But yeah, they have to go. They say they can go 2 weeks around to reach Eregion, but they think we need to get there at speed because they believe, you know, that Halbrand or that Sauron is there already, so they have to get there. So they go through these hills and then encounter these wights, and the ring is telling Galadriel there's evil in these hills. So Elrond, of course,
there's wights in them there. Sorry.
Oh, that would have been good.
So the ring seems to have, you know, some kind of properties of detecting evil or magic or something, which of course makes Elrond not trust it even more. So, yeah, they get there, they encounter the wights, and Elrond, of course, he happens to know the lore that you need to dispatch them, which is kill them with their original weapons they were buried with. So, so I don't think we'll see them again. I mean, I guess they just wanted to do another callback to something.
If only you had Tom, he could have just sang them away like he does in the book.
But then they find that there's orcs that are there, and they're shooting. They see an arrows flying, and they think they're shooting at them at first, but then they hear the horse. Which I was going to ask: do you think is Isildur's horse that has run all this way?
Wait, I thought Isildur got the horse back in the last one. No,
but then I thought the horse ran away after that, though.
Oh, I don't honestly think they definitively resolved it through the scenes that we get from the humans. Okay. Because there's sort of that, okay, the group of them scatters due to the attack by the walking trees, and you don't see Isildur with his horse after that point. So did he take it? You know, did they gather them up after the tree attack and then he took it back, or did it escape and run off? That's kind of an open question. I assume it ran off, but they don't resolve that.
I was thinking it was his horse because we haven't seen, just because the elves, Elrond's group, they for some reason didn't take horses. I feel like that probably would have been. Although then you couldn't have had this drama of getting there too fast or something. But they there's no other horses really around because these are kind of, there's not, you know, really settlements between these places apparently. So it made me think that maybe that is Isildur's horse that has just run all this way. So I don't know. I mean, that's not a, you know, hugely important part, but maybe interesting to see if Isildur comes chasing after his horse then. But of course,
I thought maybe it was the horse of one of the messengers who got killed.
Oh yeah, that's true, because they find the messengers' bodies.
Yeah.
And you think
were they
these
on
elves
foot? I can't remember.
No, they were on horses.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, that
I want to say they showed the barding on the horse. That's one of the lines they mentioned. This barding is from Linden.
Oh, that's what that was about. Okay.
Yeah, that's the horse armor.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe it's just one of those. So okay. But yeah, either way, the orcs are shooting at them. One of the elves catches an arrow, but Galadriel's ring heals it, and then she realizes we have to, you know, get back to Linden to warn the king, because this is kind of again setting up the big battle of the season of this big siege of Eregion. And they decide they can't really break through this. They can't sneak around to get there, so they have to get back to Linden and kind of report and go back in force. But Galadriel decides to stay behind. So, and she does some elvish parkour here, including on the horse, which is pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, it did look kind of cool. Dodging stuff and shooting fire arrows at these orcs and stuff. So she is doing her kind of warrior princess thing here. But I liked the scene, this action.
It was neat. I got why when she shot the lamp, why the orcs caught on fire, because of obviously the lamp oil. But why did those other two she shot immediately go up like a torch? Were they just covered in gasoline?
They're rolling around in oil before this, like you do.
But otherwise, I like the scene. I just thought it was funny that those couple orcs just go up immediately.
Maybe their armor is just cheap armor, and it's flammable.
Yeah.
So
mostly paper. Super.
They got
paper.
it from Acme Corporation, where like Wile E. Coyote gets all his stuff.
Wily Warg.
Yeah.
Yes, there you go.
And then, of course, that scene ends, and the episode ends with Galadriel being captured. So, and if you've seen any of the spots or the TV spots or trailers or other ads on Amazon, they're getting super spoilery. So, and it's hard to avoid them because, like, they'll just play it before you watch something on Amazon. So, yeah, be careful out there if you want to kind of avoid. But we start to see some of it. I don't think was a lot of it wasn't in the original trailer. So, but there are some scenes kind of pertaining to this. So that I've seen in those different spots. But yeah, Galadriel is captured by Adar. So I think we'll probably deal with this next episode. They probably won't leave this storyline hanging, but yeah.
I like that he uses the traditional Quenya greeting with her. May a star shine on the hour of our meeting.
Yeah.
And that makes sense, being that he's a first stage elf originally. And we know, like, from last season, he still has some kind of, he still does elvish rituals occasionally. Like in when he buries those seeds in the first season. And then giving the traditional, Quenya greeting to her. I thought was a nice touch. I like that.
Yeah. And then, kind of the last storyline of this episode was the Arondir, Isildur, and Estrid and Theo storyline.
Before we move on, I did not like the Elvis storyline. I'm going to throw this out there. Galadriel kind of reverted back to her old, I only see red, and Sauron, and I'm going to be all crazy and fighty and not consider. Like, I don't get why all of the elves couldn't sneak off. Like, they are eminently sneaky, and she has the ring. And I do like what they've done with the rings thus far and kind of showcasing their power over flesh kind of stuff, like the healing, and then the, this is what you're going to encounter next, and sort of foretelling the future, sending that to, at least we've seen her visions, and we didn't really talk about them much in the first 3 episodes, but her vision of Celebrimbor getting eaten by the tree, which was really interesting. And we get told Gil-galad's visions of the future, and none of them are good. And but I like that they're showcasing that. I think what I don't like about it so far is that the elves seem to be sort of trapped in the flesh in the same way men are. And in the books, they're very much not. They're sort of in both worlds at once, like the unseen world. And so, like, while I enjoyed the encounter with the Barrow-wights from sort of a, creepy thriller fight scene, that you'd have with like aliens or zombies or whatever, it also, like, it didn't make a lot of sense because the elves have that side of them as well. It talks about what Bilbo can see, when he's slowly becoming more like the ring race, is when he sees the elves or like these creatures of light, and Gandalf says, well, you can see their other true selves or their other selves now. And we're not really getting any of that in this. And so that is, to me, that's problematic. Like I get it's fan fiction, but still, like,
the elves are very much like superpowered men in this, and less like ethereal the way they're supposed to be. Yeah.
Well, at least my thought on why they didn't sneak off is they've already lost one red shirt elf, and at this point they don't know that they can get to Eregion, and they don't know what they're going to find when they get there. So they think our best course, which I think if I was in that situation, I'd probably say, okay, we're outmatched here. There's too many, even though one of us is worth a lot of them, there's probably a lot more than we can take, and we would lose some along the way trying to just get there. And that's not a guarantee. So I think them planning to return to Linden and to get, the entire force is probably the right decision. So I think that's why they chose not to kind of continue sneaking through the lines.
Oh no, like I agree with that. What I'm saying is, like, why did Galadriel have to chart? Like, why couldn't she sneak with them? Like, I don't. I mean, can't she use the
didn't they
ring for sneakiness too? Like, I don't.
Didn't they already see them at that point? They already knew there were elves there or something. I can't remember. I mean, I just watched it again.
They smell them?
Yeah, they kind of
remember.
Because I think it was probably more that they probably smelled something that was more than just more than a horse. So yeah, because the arrow shot the one elf, so maybe they smelled his blood.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and they knew that there were elves around and that they were gonna hunt them and do who knows what else to try to find them. So
yeah. Was anyone else thinking when she heals that guy? My mind went immediately to Grogu healing Grief Karga when he gets, because it's the same thing. She kind of puts his hand there. Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking more like Rapunzel, but yeah, I think either way.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, then the last storyline is as I mentioned, was the stuff with Arondir, Theo, Isildur, and Estrid. So, and then we, like I said, we get to see Ent wives and an Ent wife and an Ent. So, which when I first saw the subtitle or saw the character name, my bad eyes thought it said Snuggleroot was the Ent, but it's Snaggleroot. But
Snaggleroot. Yeah, it makes more sense.
Yeah, and I was like, that's an interesting. And played by Jim Broadbent was the Ent.
Who's
the Ent wife is Winterbloom. But what did y'all think of actually getting, Ent wives have been talked about for, I think we discussed this in a podcast. I think it might've been the Patron one last year. But we finally get to see an Ent wife, which if you've done any kind of reading or background on them, they kind of took care of some of these lands around Mordor that were burned. So it's kind of cool that they're at least, kind of honoring canon in that way, or, semi-canon in that way.
Yeah, it's interesting that they're together, an Ent and an Ent wife. I almost, when I heard that when I saw Ent wife in the trailer, I thought maybe there would be like several of them, like kind of a community of Ent wives. But because like but this is interesting because like it adds a little more nuance to it, because I guess apparently not all the Ents and Ent wives separated. Which would make sense. Not everybody's going to do the same thing. And I assume they're a couple. They're like living together. So, I just thought it was interesting that to see the Ent and Ent wife together was nice, and I guess it is a little more hopeful than the tale as we're given it in the books, where the Ent wives kind of all disappear and the Ents don't know what happened.
Well, they still could.
Yeah. True enough. Yeah.
And see, I was kind of thinking they're setting up the Ents now because they'll be, they'll show up at Aragion to fight the troll. So maybe that's why they brought them in here, and then when they have kind of a counter weapon to the troll that will be there, but.
And Ents are stronger than trolls, they say in the books, though.
But she says because the Ent wife, they think that these men that are in the Southland, or on the outskirts of the Southlands, are the ones that are kind of burning a path, and so that's why they're capturing these wild men and whatnot, including Theo. And they even though Rondir is an elf, they still kind of question him. And have you ever touched axe to tree? And unfortunately he did, because in the first season he had to do that that one time while he was in prison, and she's getting ready to like smash him and he kind of says, I beg, kind of asks forgiveness. And then there's a great line from her as he's talking to her, where she says forgiveness takes an age, which that even though we're taught, in our faith to try to forgive quickly, it does sometimes take a long time to forgive. So
and for Ents, it literally would take an age to forgive somebody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about the harm that was done, right? You see this path kind of scoured through the forest, and how long would it take to kind of replace those trees and get them grown up again? into the same kind of state. Like, that makes sense. Like conceptually, like the harm you've done to this life, you know, it will take an age for it to be replaced, to be forgiven. So I think that speaks to kind of the Entish thought process. I did think the Ent wife was very Entish. I always kind of consider them in my mind to be different sort of, not quite makeup, because they're both going to be kind of tree forms, but she seemed like just as, you know, as big and kind of buff as the Ents, and I always consider them to be more like the smaller, slenderer trees. I don't know where I got the impression of that from, if it was from any of the materials or if it's just something I made up in my head. So I can't hold them on that necessarily, but for the most part, I like the scenes with the Ents and the conversation with that they had with the elf. It was neat. It was. I'm glad they included them.
Yeah, and then that leads to Estrid finding her. She's about to kiss Isildur. You know, like literally as they're moving in for that, her betrothed reappears. So setting up a little bit of a love triangle, possibly, or you know, Isildur, you know, kind of moving on from her or whatever.
Love triangles waste time. Sorry, another one.
Well,
of my pet peeves.
We'll see. We'll see if it does. I don't know. Because I was curious too. We can get there at the end, but before, about some speculation what Isildur does next. But yeah, then Theo and Arondir kind of make up as well. So Theo kind of has that forgiveness that Winterbloom was talking about, that because he wasn't really mad at Arondir. He was mad in the sense of the elves could have stopped this, you know, but I mean, I don't know that they could have, even if they were there in full force, because what Adar and the orcs were doing was very sneaky, and they were like, I mean, they did it under their noses by digging tunnels and whatnot, and but they kind of make up, and Arondir calls him the Lord of Pelargir. So I thought that was nice. Like, he's kind of taken up that role of leader for his people, kind of as his mother. He's kind of taken up his mother's place. So so it looks like he'll be staying there for the time being. But I didn't know if I think that was about all I had on that storyline before we kind of get into speculation. But I don't know if y'all had any thoughts on that.
There's just a bunch of little things that made me scratch my head. Like when Arondir decides to, you know, put the freedom of what's her name? Estrid is like at night when they're about to camp and go to sleep. And I'm like, that feels to me like the worst time to like start trusting a prisoner, like when you're right about to go to sleep or you're most vulnerable. Like, and I get that from like a trust kind of perspective. And it's interesting because it turns out she totally was not lying. Like, she has a betrothed, and she did kind of take the mark, it looks like, to get out of, you know, to survive. And she does come back to save them. So, but that piece, like where they're at night and he unlocks her chains, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if anybody's going to actually do that. Like,
right. And he shouldn't have, because she then goes for his sword immediately.
Yeah. Immediately. I did like the giant worm thing, dinner or supper, whatever he called it after he killed it.
Oh, yeah. This is supper. Yeah.
I just thought I'd probably rather go hungry than eat that. Who knows what this kind of twisted thing is? Like, it's
I mean, like drives you mad when you eat it, maybe. Like, I don't know.
I feel like that's like a title you would take on yourself after that point. Eater of the nameless things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw some stuff online about people saying they were glad Isildur didn't give in to his sadness, like Atreyu from Neverending Story.
Yeah, I was getting pretty hard Neverending Story vibes from that scene.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, she, you know, and this was when she was still in chains. She tried to save them, because both Arondir and Isildur got, you know, we first see them sink into the hole, and we think they're just it's something it's just a hole in the ground, but then this giant worm thing erupts and she's looks like it's about to eat her, and then of course Arondir cuts his way out of it. And just I was like, man, y'all need to. I hope there's a river around and they did clean up. So I guess
yeah. Who knows what kind of digestive juices you have on your clothing?
Gross.
Where'd my cloak go? Oh,
maybe that's why we can eat it, because we were already inside of it. So I mean, we probably
turnabout is fair play.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, I think one of my questions after this was, where is Isildur going? Is he going to go back to Pelargir, or is he going to go with Arondir? Because I was wondering if maybe he's going to try to get to the Grey Havens, or like he knows that's a way to maybe get a ship to get back to Numenor. Because there's no men that really have a ship that could probably get him there, that can really sail the sea. So I didn't know if y'all had any thoughts or knew what Isildur might, because now he doesn't have that romantic connection potentially to back in Pelargir. So I didn't know what y'all thought of what Isildur does next, because we didn't see Numenor this episode, and it sounded like the Queen wanted to come back, and she said, we'll be back at the end of season 1, but now as of last week, she's kind of lost her power, or is losing favor. So we'll see if she can get that mission underway. So I didn't know if y'all had any thoughts or speculation on where Isildur's going.
Figure he's going to go after his horse. So maybe that does turn out to be his horse up north, and he's probably going to... I kind of do think that's probably what he's going to do. I don't know for sure, because we don't know whether he had it or not. I do have a feeling whether the Queen, whatever she is at this point, or whatever Al-Farazon is at this point, there's going to be a mission back to Middle-earth, because Al-Farazon's speech to his son in season 1 about colonies and revenues and stuff, and it's like, I wouldn't trade that for anything you could give me. So I still think he probably has all that in his mind, and yeah, I think Isildur will probably go north. I don't know if he'll go with Arondir or not, but he'll probably go north.
What about you, Thomas? Any thoughts? Where do you think Isildur is going?
I think like he'll either go north, or he might hang out with Theo at Pelargir just to kind of cement, because like if the other thing we've been speculating about, where if Theo ends up as the Oathbreaker King, like he's got to be at least somewhat closely aligned to Isildur at first, because he breaks allegiance with Isildur and doesn't come out to the War of the Last Alliance. So if they got to start building up that relationship like now, which they did a little bit last episode. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of their, friendship, I guess, to make it worse later when Theo potentially betrays him.
Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah. Speaking of Theo, I was looking at stuff online, and like there's also speculation that he could be one of the Nazgul. And so I don't know if y'all, I still think I lean toward Oathbreaker for him, but I could also see him being made into a Nazgul, because he already has that dark connection with Sauron, because he held the flame sword Keyblade, whatever it was. Has that, so he's already, has kind of been touched by Sauron in that sense. So I don't know. I think I still lean toward Oathbreaker, but because I think that would kind of make sense to have a king that's kind of the king in Middle Earth before the surviving Numenorians get there and found their kingdoms. So I don't know.
I think if he's anybody we know, it'll be the Oathbreaker, I think.
I'm excited for the adventures of Theo and Isildur. Get a whole montage of them fighting orcs and wild men and going on adventures and fighting Shelob, and a series of animated comics.
Come on, Amazon, get on it.
Yeah, and then the only other bit of speculation I had was, which we already kind of touched on, was the Ent and Ent wife out of Rhaegon. So So because they're, if they want to go after orcs, that's where the orcs are going to be. So, and then I was thinking next week, since we didn't check in with Numenor or Khazad-dûm this week, we probably need to get some time there. So, because I think they've pretty much said the last 2 to 2.5 episodes of the season are going to be the Battle of Eregion.
Yeah, we're already halfway through.
Yeah. So,
right?
Yeah, we've got to kind of start setting up those pieces if we're going to see the dwarves get there, and if Numenor will, we were talking about them coming to Middle Earth, because I think they probably will kind of combine how Numenor gets Sauron because it's different in the book, but I think they might combine it with this, where they capture Sauron, or where Sauron allows himself to be captured by Numenor, or Anatar as he'll be known.
Yeah.
So I kind of think that Numenor, we'll also see Numenor show up as well and fight at Eregion, and then they, Anatar turns himself in a way to get out of there and seek power in Numenor. So,
which is what he wanted to do last season.
Yeah.
So
let's see here. We got orcs from Mordor. We got the elves from Lindon, the dwarves from Khazad-dûm, and we got the men from Numenorian. So what's our fifth, so we can get our Battle of Five Armies here? Second version. So that's what this is turning into.
It'll be the Eagles.
It's gonna be the Eagles. It's always the Eagles.
We've already seen an eagle, so they've already made a model of one. So.
Copy paste.
Yeah, can't just let this computer model go to waste.
Yeah, and the only other thing the only other note I had was when not Gandalf was getting to Rune, or getting to Tom Bombadil's house, his map got blown away, and I was like, oh, it's the Will of Manwë blowing the map, and it lands on the tree, because he's trying to find a staff, because he's been having this dream of getting a staff. So, and then of course the tree eats him, and then later Tom's like, well, did you try asking him instead of just taking it?
Yeah, I love that line. Didn't you ask him? What?
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I like that we saw both Ents and a Huorn in this episode. The Huorns being the kind of sentient trees from the Legendarium.
Yeah. So you're talking about the ones where they put the people in the prison trees, or the?
No, I meant the tree that eats the stranger.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, it would be, since it's like it's either an Ent that's gone tree-ish or a tree that's gone Entish, and the Ents call them Huorns.
Huorns, yeah. That's right.
Awesome. Well, we did have a little bit of feedback, and there's been a great conversation on the Discord. So if you're not joined us there, that's definitely a great place to chat and discuss some of this stuff. But I thought I would bring in one comment that Alex Murray, who was one of our panelists, who initially said she wasn't going to watch this season, but has decided to. So
she bit the bullet.
Join us. But she did say this. I thought this was interesting. She said, I had an interesting conversation today with the parents of someone who works on the costumes for Rings of Power. I mentioned that high def filming takes away from the otherworldliness that would otherwise be in any fantasy film, especially anything associated with Middle Earth. The couple said the set is actually incredible to walk around, and the details are second to none, but none of that is coming through in the show itself. So any thoughts on this is what she asked. So I was just going to open it, and I'm not a technical film guy, so I don't know all the details and ins and outs, but I definitely think, it does look great. The sets really do look great, and it would be incredible to walk around. So I think part of making these things high def is they have to put a lot of detail into the sets so that it shows up on screen. But I don't know if any of y'all had any thoughts or comments on hers.
Yeah, I think when you can actually see the set, like it's really well done and detailed. Like Tom Bombadil's house is pretty fantastic. The inside of the dark blue wizards, the navy blue wizards fortress is pretty cool. The stores' burrows, I think they're really well done. But then again, there's so many of those sets that are in like, quarter light, eighth light, total and complete darkness. Like that's I can't tell. So I assume the woods look like woods, I guess. I can't tell. All I can see is blue eyes. Yeah, I'm not bitter about that.
Maybe it's our man eyes instead of our elf eyes. We don't have them.
That's right.
Anything from you, Thomas, on her comment? Or
I think, and it was weird. The Hobbit. I'm going to reference the Hobbit movie trilogy again. Something about the way they filmed those always looked odd to me, and I know that they used. I remember in some behind the scenes stuff they used some like a different kind of camera that they used in the original Jackson film. So everything looked too real, if that makes sense. Like, it didn't look like a movie. It looked like a really high resolution photo. Like it almost looked like the backgrounds were almost too real. I don't know how to describe it, and I don't think I'm describing it well. But it's like, I think there was something about the high def cameras they were using on those Hobbit movies that threw me off when I first saw them. Especially when in those first scenes when like Gandalf is like in the Shire and he walks up to Bilbo's house, and I'm like, why does everything look like it's like bright Technicolor green, like all the grass? I'm like, what's going on? Like, and I remember too, they shot the Hobbit movies at a different frame rate as well. So that may have added to the kind of uncanniness. But I feel like with high def, I feel like it doesn't do older CGI any favors.
No.
or even CGI now. Like, there's only so photorealistic you can make a computer image. At least I think. So it's like, I thought that some of the sets looked really good in this episode, but some of them also looked not so good. Like some of the rocks in the desert look really fake. Like,
that's a fake rock right there.
Yeah, like when the stranger is going through that sort of like dried up, I don't know if it's like a dried up riverbed, that channel where he's following the goat to get to Tom Bombadil's house. I'm like, that is not a real land feature. That right there, they built that. Like, I just had the sense that it didn't look like real stone. But besides that, I think for the most part, the sets have impressed me and look really good. But like you, Jeff, I don't know enough about the technical side of stuff to say if they could be doing a better job with it.
Yeah, I don't know, but if Amazon, if you want to fly us out there, we'll go take a tour and
yep,
and we'll promote it. We'll promote it for you.
Yeah, you'll get to hear me exclaim, "Oh, that's what I was supposed to be looking at," over and over and over.
All right. Well, any last thoughts on this episode before we close out?
I mentioned on the Discord that I could nitpick this show until the Daggerath comes, but overall, I've been enjoying the heck out of it, and I've just been enjoying myself so far, having a lot of fun, and excited for next week.
Awesome. What about you, Pat?
Yeah, this moved me more into the caution side of the optimism. Like I've swung back. It was kind of, to be honest, it was kind of a letdown. I thought the first three were done so well, and it may be because there was no Sauron, and because I really just enjoy the Sauron stuff so much, and he is not in this episode. And I took some issue with a lot of it. So still cautiously optimistic. Like I said, the last 2 episodes will be great no matter what. Like, I think they can do a giant battle.
Yeah, I think part of it is some of the comments I've seen is this episode was slower, and I think like you can't have huge stuff happen every episode. I mean, I wish you could, but I think they do need to kind of take some breaks, you know. So I kind of took it as like, okay, this is kind of we had a pretty strong premiere with a lot of stuff going on. So now we kind of get to settle in a little bit to some of these storylines and spend time with some of these characters, you know, and develop because we really see some movement really see some further kind of discord between Elrond and Galadriel, because he gives her the ring, or I mean, she gives him the ring, and his little company says, "Oh, she's saving us," and he's like, "No, she's saving the ring." So there's still that, you know, contentiousness there. Which, I mean, at some point they're gonna have to make up, because they're gonna be family down the road at some point. The timeline's kind of fuzzy at this point, so who knows when that'll be. But
kind of fuzzy doesn't even. I mean, oh my God, these characters would never seen each other, knowing about each other.
But anyway, but yeah, I think having a slow episode is good, is okay after having like a 3-episode pretty strong premiere. Now, if next week is also really slow and they don't have a little bit more movement, and I think we'll see kind of, like I said, we'll check in probably with Numenor and Khazad-dûm. So that's some of my favorite stuff in the show. So getting back to that will be all good. But all right, well, I think that'll do it for this episode of The Secrets of Middle Earth. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make the show possible, including Samuel S., Misty K., Isaac B., Kate N., and Ron L. Their generous donations help us to continue to create The Secrets of Middle Earth and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them at sqpn.com/give. Now, we'd love to hear from you, our listeners. What did you think of episode 4? You can let us know on our Facebook page or on Twitter, or by sending an email to middleearth@sqpn.com, by leaving us a comment on YouTube, or by visiting our channel on the StarQuest Discord server, StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. So you can send us all your hate mail, theories, whatever you got. So join us next time for our discussion of Rings of Power episode 5. And until then, thank you, Thomas, for joining me and sharing the secrets of Middle Earth.
Thank you, Jeff. It was great.
And thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Jeff. And I remain cautiously optimistic.
And once again, I'm Jeff Haecker. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Middle Earth on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy: The Secrets of Stargate. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/Stargate.